We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years, approximately 8 to 6 billion Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a 3rd grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Well, let me, since I haven't spoken on this chance, number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single time. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money. Teach them how to farm. This is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the central. Good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the most on the Reparationist Perspective, bringing you those Freedmen, B1 FBA idols, hot topics, and making the case for reparations, making the case for weaponizing our vote, socializing our suffering. And this evening, family, I want to talk about the Mayor's Consortium and their agreement with the 6.2 Quadrillion that Thomas Kramer's math would propose. Okay, that we are owed for reparations. 6.2 quadrillion. We're going to hear directly from Thomas Kramer. Shout out to Reset Race, who shared this link with me about Thomas Kramer unpacking his math on how he derived 6.2 quadrillion just for slavery, family. Just for slavery. So really, I need to modify the 104 trillion to more closely align with Thomas's math because it's quite conservative, as you will hear from him momentarily. What's up, Trey Lincoln? Thank you so much for joining the live, family. I so appreciate you being here. Yeah, so we're going to talk about it because, it's a little too early to be talking about numbers and what we're owed, but we might as well start getting our minds wrapped around this idea of not playing small when it comes to this number, okay? Because I'm a negotiator by trade, and you clearly don't start where you want to end. You clearly do not start your negotiations where you want to end. I have said on several of my lives that I don't agree with 12 trillion, Sandy Darity's number, Dr. William Sandy Darity, much respect. But I totally disagree that our reparations in the amount of 12 trillion or even 20 trillion is enough to close an over $100 trillion egregious racial wealth gap. And now that this government is seeking to spend more of our reparations on illegal immigrants, criminals. These people broke the law. They came over that border when they weren't supposed to and got separated. I believe they intentionally did that. And now they're making a case to sue the government as if we don't have the latitude to sue the government. Everybody wants to treat us like we can't do it. The devil is a lie. We can. And we are discussing a response to the recent puckery by the Biden administration to even fix its mouth, to even suggest $500,000 to illegal immigrants before paying our reparations in the quadrillions. And we need to stop playing small. We need to stop it with these numbers and trying to come up with a number befitting for white folks' level of comfort. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It is not Freedmen's fault that the number is so high. The debt is the debt. You see, the time to think about undermining and making us bottom cast in this country is when Lincoln gave us the 40 acres and a mule that our men earned when they won the Civil War for the Union. They won that. They did that. And that's why we were called freedmen. In walks the Freedmen's Bureau Bank, which this government put who? White folks in charge of to pillage. Yes. The government owes. My fight is not the immigrants. My fight is for freedmen whose ancestors built all the wealth immigrants and white folks eat from. And my fight is with the government who legislated us to the bottom of this Titanic as its anchor. And so this is not the time to give in, up, or out. This is not the time to be defeated by recent news that he's going to give close to $500,000 per criminal, per illegal alien, our reparations. You see, it is not our fault. Oh, Biden wants to weaponize our tax dollars to make sure illegal criminal aliens are comfortable in the country our ancestors built with their lives. So I don't want to hear about how we've got to give them a number they can swallow. We've got to give them a number that's palpable, because they're not giving a damn when it comes to giving away billions and trillions of dollars during a pandemic that they created in the Wuhan, China lab. Okay. $50 million plus investment in this Iris they, and the stupid 19. I have to use these code words because ScriptTube has literally shut down one of my videos, which was totally about the lie that freedmen don't want to work. That's what the video was about. But because I cited the family of Alan K. Owlpay and what they had to say about what he eyed day from, they struck down my entire video on do ADOCs not want to work? Or is this Biden's excuse to flood the country with more immigrants to make us the permanent anchor of white folks' capitalism that they killed and stole from freedmen? That's what the topic was. That was what the subject line was. But the whole thing was shut down by ScrewTube. And so I'm fighting now to get it reinstated. So when I speak Igpe Attenley, understand that I have to do so by design of my First Amendment right being impeded upon. I'm being censored up the wazoo because I fight for freedmen. Okay? All of us are. All of us in New Black media are being pucked with because we are telling the TR Ruth and telling like a TI is to freedmen and allies. And that's not popular because they need those sheeple to turn up in 2022 to continue sheep walking to the polls, voting blue no matter damn who, to freedmen's peril. And I'm not going down without a fight. And so I decided, because I'm in these kind of tete-a-tetes with some of my comrades over Darity's number or Kramer's number, and I'm here to tell you, Kramer's number is on the very low end. You know how my intro says 104 trillion? No, Kramer's very conservative estimate for just slavery alone is 6.2 quadrillion. I'm here to tell you it's significantly more than that because it doesn't even include Jim Crow nor accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage. That cost, that suffering, damages and suffering, none of that has been factored into the 6.2 quadrillion. So me and my comrades are full court press on this issue. And all this does is give me the bravado to lean in every aspect of what we're owed. Turn down for what? Who's over here? I see you, Tanya Princess, Terry Lewis. Thank you guys for joining the live. Do know if you're tuning in from Facebook or Twitter, I cannot see you. I cannot see your chats, but I welcome you. And if you want me to acknowledge you, please come over to ScrewTube, to the Reparationist Perspective broadcast, where I can see your comments and read them towards the conclusion of this particular episode, before I go into my next topic about how the Catholic Church owes us reparations. Oh, I'm going to talk about everybody that owes us reparations. And while I'm on the topic, y'all have got to tune in to executive producer Samuel and Tanya Jackson's Epics original called Enslaved. It is epic in every way. Epics is EPIX. But you must watch it because it will strengthen your resolve in this fight that makes us all too weary. Wait till you see them going on deep dives, diving with a purpose. I secretly pray my daughter, who grew an affinity for swimming with the dolphins and snorkeling, while in Kona, Hawaii for her 17th birthday. Well, absolutely look into the Diving with a Purpose team to die for them. That's my secret prayer between me and y'all, okay? But Diving with a Purpose is going all over the globe, showing you the horrors of what happened to our ancestors. One horrific story, they literally nailed the ancestors in the bottom of the ship because it had hit something and was, they wanted to save their own lives. So they nailed like over 600 of us into the bottom of the ship so that we couldn't become free. They murdered us, y'all. This debt is so gargantuan, family. And it is on us to lean in, to not give in, to not give up, to not give out. Okay? And I'm proud of us, family. Keep doing the work. We're winning. You understand about faith? It's the evidence of things hoped. It's faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things yet to be seen. So keep the faith, family. All it takes is a mustard seed. For those of us who understand that we are the Christ, all it takes is a mustard seed, and a collective focus on that seed is going to manifest reparations in a gargantuan way that will make us whole. Okay? So let's use these trivial setbacks by the Biden administration. Let's weaponize all of what he's done and is attempting to do to us by replacing us with immigration. Let's turn it on its head and weaponize it against him the way we so brilliantly do everything that is leveled at us for our extinction. So this video I'm going to share with you right now, without further ado, is going to explain Thomas Kramer. I'm going to shut it off after Thomas speaks, and I may do another video because I want to introduce the lady that's speaking on the ADOS and thing of this nature. Now, I've pivoted to Freedmen, and I'm fighting to get us to go resurrect all the things they took from us under Lincoln. I think his name was Andrew Johnson or Andrew Jackson, that took our 40 acres and a mule and gave it to white folks in the form of the Homestead Act. Even our slave masters got paid repair and we did not. Oh, it's going to be rich, but I need to break this up in bite-sized segments so that they don't give me a copyright strike. So this segment, we're going to be dealing with Thomas Kramer's 6.2 Quadrillion. I'll take your questions and read your comments. We'll shut this down, and I'm coming back with the puckery of the Catholic Church and its involvement in the slave trade and why they owe in a gargantuan way. And then I may come back. We'll see if I have the energy for that. Otherwise, there's always tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. Whenever I'm not advocating or in those meetings, I'll be here to bring you the TR Ruth and tell it like a TI is for Freedmen. We've already got everything we need in the Constitution. So it's the fight for reparations and to resurrect what we've already gotten, that all these immigrants are weaponizing for their own come up. Okay, family, it's rich. So stand by. Let me cue up the video from Thomas Kramer, and I'll be back. Please like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. I'm being shadow banned. Although my last video on the $450K per immigrant It's gotten about 186 views. And you guys got me to over 600 subscribers. Next benchmark, 700 subscribers. Yay, guys. Keep on going. Keep on sharing. Thank you. Stand by.
Your slides.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, well, why don't you take it away with your slides? And by the way, we're going to have questions at the end of the program.
Okay, Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to thank you, Dr. Lenton Akins and the Beverly Hills Bar Association for inviting me to give a presentation on reparations for the descendants of American slaves. What I would like to do is first give a personal motivation and an introduction, then talk about U.S. slavery reparations proposals throughout history, and precedents for slavery reparations. And I should warn you, those are all in the wrong direction towards slave owners rather than the enslaved. And then I'll show how I went about estimating U.S. slavery reparations just to get a ballpark figure. As for my motivation, as was already mentioned, that I'm originally from Germany. I was born in post-World War II Germany, raised in Tübingen, which is a beautiful city or town. But in high school, I learned about the Holocaust in every single school subject and felt ashamed of my history, and always had the wish to express to a Holocaust survivor how ashamed I felt. And then, of course, I never thought this would ever happen. But then one day I met Mieczysław Langer, a survivor of 5 concentration camps and a death march in his youth. And in his retirement, he relocated from Israel, of all places, to Germany. And he treated me like a son. I couldn't believe it. So our 2 families went on a spiritual journey to Poland, to the concentration camp memorial sites where he lost his entire family. Here's a picture at the Płażów concentration camp memorial site. Mieczysław with his grandson David, and I was always wondering, how was Mieczysław ever able to regain trust in Germans or in Germany as a country after the suffering that he went through as a young man? And of course, I don't want to take anything away from Mieczysław's incredible humanity, but I think what I'm going to show you next probably didn't hurt. And that was the fact that Mieczysław received a reparations pension from the 1970s all the way until he unfortunately passed away in 2015 from the West German government first, and then from the government of reunited Germany, worth about $2,000 per month in 2018 dollars. Now that's not much. It's clearly not enough in any way. It's merely a symbolic gesture. So that's what I'm thinking about reparations. It can't undo the damage, but it can make words of apology more meaningful. And then, of course, there are differences with the example of Holocaust reparations and proposed slavery reparations. In Germany's example, the perpetrators and some of the victims were still alive when reparations were negotiated in 1952. But what about slavery reparations in the United States? Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell opposes paying reparations, saying none of us currently living are responsible for slavery. It's not entirely true, because the federal government that allowed slavery to exist is still living. It ended slavery through a civil war with great expense in blood and treasure, but it did not provide reparations to the enslaved, so it ended the injustice. But that's different from actually paying reparations to the enslaved. And we all have a responsibility in it, I feel, including myself as a recent immigrant to this country, because we all, at least indirectly, benefit from the startup capital that slavery provided to the U.S. economy. And we're attracted to this country because of its strong economy. Now, let me talk about a number of slavery reparations proposals throughout history. The earliest example that I could find was George Washington, here pictured with his slave Billy Lee that accompanied him throughout the Revolutionary War. Lee was freed by Washington's will, along with all the slaves that Washington held in his own name. And he wrote in his will, "It is my will and desire that all the slaves which I hold in my own right shall receive their freedom, seeing that a regular and permanent fund be established for their support, so long as there are subjects requiring it. George Washington's will was widely circulated in the newspapers of the day to set an example for the voluntary abolition of slavery. Now, that was a naive idea. It obviously didn't happen. But what's unique about this example is that Washington thought about establishing a fund for the enslaved rather than for the enslavers, as all other abolition proposals at the time sought to give reparations to the slave owners for the loss of their property rather than to the enslaved. Another example is the notion of 40 acres and a mule, which goes back to General Sherman's Field Order number 15 of 1865, whereby 40-acre parcels of land were distributed to 40,000 freedmen and women until President Andrew Johnson returned the land to the former slave owners. Representative Thaddeus Stevens introduced a reparations bill calling for 40 acres and a mule, but it failed in 1866 and 1867. But the notion of 40 acres and a mule stuck around. And these proposals inspired land-based reparations demands that echoed through the next century. For example, Sojourner Truth in the 1870s called for land-based reparations. Queen Mother Moore in the 20th century called for land. Dempsey Travis in 1970 called for a new Homestead Act that would accomplish this. And most recently, William Darity and Kirsten Mullen in their 2020 book, From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century, also use land-based reparations as one way of calculating reparations. I'll get back to that in a minute. There were other reparations proposals throughout this centuries. Kelly House in the late 19th century recommended pensions to formerly enslaved. She went to prison for her efforts. Marcus Garvey called for European reparations for colonial depredations in Africa. James Forman in 1969 called for cash reparations from faith groups that benefited from slavery, and he was able to collect some. And then economist Robert S. Brown demanded in 1974 a transfer of a sizable chunk of America's wealth to the Black community. Now, in 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, which provided $20,000 per survivor to Japanese-American World War II internees, accompanied by a letter of apology from the US president. And this motivated John Conyers to introduce House Bill H.R. 40 for the first time, I think, in 1989. Correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, again, it's currently introduced by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. The bill itself does not provide for reparations, but for the formation of a commission to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans. In 1990, economist Richard F. America published the book, The Wealth of Races, which is an edited volume where economists used a price-based estimation method based on historical slave prices to estimate what the slave owners gained from slavery. I'll refer back to that in a second as well. In 2014, the issue of slavery reparations went mainstream, and this is largely thanks to Ta-Nehisi Coates' article, The Case for Reparations in the Atlantic. And with that, I'm turning to precedents for slavery reparations. The most egregious case is the Haitian independence debt, so-called. Here is a picture of Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the leaders of the Haitian Revolution of 1791 to 1804. They were able to permanently abolish slavery in first Saint-Domingue, and then they founded the Independent Republic of Haiti. And in 1825, King Charles X of France sends a fleet demanding an indemnity from Haiti for the former owners. So these owners that had fled to France were supposed to get reparations from the former slaves. And Haiti, in order to maintain its independence, had to agree to this devilish deal. And the crippling Haitian independence debt was financed through loans with French banks. And these were serviced from 1825 to 1947 over a period of 122 years. The original claimants weren't even alive at the time. This was all to descendants. Often it's said we can't pay reparations because it's too difficult to trace. The French government did a great job tracing these individual claimants through the generations. The other example is reparations to British slave owners. In 1833, the British government abolished slavery, took up loans, and paid reparations to slave owners. It serviced those loans for 182 years, from 1833 all the way to 2015. It literally just got done paying that off. So it settled generations of British with a debt for slavery. In the United States too, we have an example in the District of Columbia. In 1862, the US government abolished slavery in Washington, DC, providing $300 in reparations per enslaved to slave owners. Reparations for about 3,000 formerly enslaved were paid out at the height of the Civil War, when every penny counted for the preservation of the Union. Now, with that, I'm going to talk about ways how US slavery reparations can be estimated, this time for the descendants of the actually enslaved, not the enslavers. There's a formula that Professor Swinton published in Richard F. America's edited volume, The Wealth of Races, in 1990, where he provides formulae how different historical injustices can be accounted for in an additive way, counting lost income, lost freedom, lost opportunities to accumulate capital, as well as pain and suffering for colonial slavery, then slavery during the United States, and then for discrimination after slavery. I'm going to present only one of those boxes, and that's lost income due to US slavery. I'm not going to talk about colonial slavery and not about post-slavery discrimination, not because I don't find it important. Actually, I do, but because I don't have the data necessary to do those estimations. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to get the total loss that African Americans suffered from these injustices. I'm only focusing on one single element, but it's already whopping enough. There are three approaches to estimating US slavery reparations. As I already mentioned, land-based, price-based, and I use a wage-based method. The land-based method uses the current value of 40 acres and a mule. The price-based method takes the expected return from owning a slave. My critique is that this only counts for the 12-hour daylight hours during the day that the enslaved were working in the fields for cash crop production. Anything else was a cost factor to the enslavers. That's why I use a wage-based method where I'm arguing that the enslaved lost control over all 24 hours of the day and would have to be compensated at the hourly wage in the free labor market at the time. So the land-based method, I calculated all of those in 2018 dollars to make them comparable. The land-based method produced an estimate of $2.978 trillion based on Darity's work. A price-based method, $13.2 trillion in 2018 dollars based on Marchetti, also in the Wealth of Races. And the wage-based method that I published in 2015 would in 2018 dollars be $18.6 trillion. Those are whopping amounts, but I want to show you how I arrived at this estimate. And basically it's fairly simple. You need the number of enslaved people in every year from 1776 to 1860. And I use US Census information to get estimates. And then historical unskilled wages from 1776 to 1860. I'm ignoring centuries of colonial slavery and the years from 1861 to 1865, as the number of enslaved remaining is difficult to estimate. So overall, it's a conservative estimate. Here are the US Census figures about the population of the enslaved in every decade from 1790 to 1860. And what I do to get the annual estimates is I use linear interpolation for the years in between censuses, and I'm using linear extrapolation for the years 1776 to 1789. Other methods could be used, but this is a fairly simple way. And then I have the production workers' hourly compensation in nominal dollars for the year 1790 to 1860. And you see that in 1790, the wage was only 2 cents and it didn't rise much by 1860. So those are extremely puny amounts, again, arriving at a conservative estimate. Here's an excerpt of my Excel spreadsheet. In the first column, I have the year. Then I have the number of the enslaved, italics if it's estimated, bold print if it's measured. And for wage as well, italics if estimated and bold print if measured. And then the hours per year, that's the number of enslaved times all the days in the year times all the hours in the day. And that multiplied with the wage gives the annual total. And that is then accumulated up and compounded with only 3% interest. And this goes at the bottom of the page till 1794, but I continue this process until 1860. And from then on, I use this formula to compound it up to 2018, again at 3%, which barely makes up for inflation. I arrive at a total amount in 2018 dollars of $18.58 trillion. For comparison's sake, the US GDP in 2018 was $20.89 trillion. So it's roughly 1 year worth of the US GDP, conservatively estimated. Taking an interest rate of 6%, that's the interest rate Georgetown University used in its sales contract when it sold 272 slaves in 1838 to save the institution from financial ruin. If I use that percentage, 6%, the debt balloons to $6.2 quadrillion. So basically what I take from this calculation is the interest rate will be the single most important number in any negotiations between the African American descendants of the enslaved and the US federal government. So in conclusion, the goal of reparations to African American descendants of the enslaved is, in my view, at a minimum, closing the per capita black-white wealth gap, which was estimated in 2018 to amount to about $352,000 per African American descendants of the enslaved. The wage-based reparations at only 3% interest would close that comfortably. Other amounts are still outstanding and they're additive according to Swinton's formula. So there's more research to be done and more negotiations to be had. The portion of the losses to be compensated should be negotiated between the federal government and the descendant community. The same, in my view, goes for the modalities. Should it be cash? Should it be trust funds? Should it be pensions, health accounts, educational funds? Also between the federal government and the descendant community. I would like to say one thing though about cash reparations. I did some public opinion research and found that cash reparations are the least popular modality of reparations. Other modalities, however, require administration by well-meaning black or white administrators, and thus they, in my view, they carry the risk of paternalistic racism. Cash payments avoid this risk. Restore decision-making to the rightful heirs of the enslaved. With that, I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm ending this share here.
Okay, then, Sharice, are you ready for your presentation?
Hold on, family. I want to pause that because I don't want Sharice just yet. I'm going to bring her up on a separate video and, try to do it in bite-sized segments. I'll do the Q&A separate too. I don't want to get a copyright strike, family. But as you heard, Thomas Kramer's math, it is very conservatively priced at 6%, and it's just for slavery. That's a very, very conservative estimate of what we are owed. Now, if you listen to the top of my show, you will hear everything that number does not include. You will hear everything that number does not include. And so we can't be afraid to go for broke. We get one shot. We can't be scared to ask for absolutely every dime of what is owed. Because this is not like the Japanese who got a $20,000 payout. We want to be paid at least for as long as it took them to drive us into the bottom as the bottom caste and anchor of their capitalism. You see, this should last for generations and generations and generations and generations. I mean, you're talking 15 generations of us that are living with its vestiges of our ancestors' heinous chattel slavery. It's going to take as many generations as we have in this country to close the egregious racial wealth gap. And we can't be like afraid to ask for what is absolutely owed. And this is why the study is important. I know people are like, well, they didn't have to study to give the refugees 6.2 of 100 billion. That show's coming tomorrow. They're earmarking 100 billion for an investment in immigration. I keep telling you guys, their whole entire goal is to weaponize immigration against us, to replace us, to genocide us to as few in number as the Indians. And I know you guys think, oh, she's just a conspiracy theorist. She's just a drama queen. No, it's already happening. Our repair is being used on everyone but us. Biden will not even make an executive order of the HR 40 to get the study going. He likes to trap everything that he's promised within a Congress whom most of them pose as Republicans in Democratic clothing. 8 of them voted down a $15 an hour minimum wage. And that don't even scratch the surface when the median national home price is damn near 400,000. And our median national income is around 30,000. So they have our extinction on their minds. And that's been the case for over 100 years. These plans are over 100 years old, and we need to snap out of it. And everybody needs to move as a block. Egos need to be set on the shelf, and we need to come together and fight the Democrats. Please understand, or overstand rather, that this is not just the Democrats. You do know that the Democrats and the Republicans are 2 wings of the same oligarch bird. They each take a turn shitting on us. Please know that this is not exclusive to the Democrats. What's problematic about the Democrats' involvement is that they've had us in a trance of lesser of 2 evils since FDR. So that's why I take serious issue with the Klan in blue. Because when you're dealing with Biden, you're dealing with Strom Thurmond's eulogist and protege. And you have to look up the atrocities of a Strom Thurmond and his association to that. When you look at a crooked Hillary, you're looking at someone who once stumped for Barry Goldwater, Republican. So you see a lot of these Republicans coming over and posing as Democrats. And they're all in cahoots together. Please trust and believe that it's fake outrage on the Republican side when it comes to this country being overwhelmed with immigration. Their poor whites don't understand it, but they don't give a damn about their poor whites, never have. They're a savage people. Not all, there's some exceptions. But by and large, they're a very savage people that was killing their own until we became the target. So they don't give a damn about their poor. They like keeping them ignorant and making them believe that we somehow are robbing them of an American living, when the truth of the matter is they didn't leverage or weaponize their whiteness tough enough to not be on the bottom of their group. But that was always available to them to do. And so the Republicans are just as complicit. They fake outrage about these immigrants coming over this border. But let me help you understand. The plans for our extinction is on both sides of the aisle. So I've said it a bazillion times and I'm going to keep saying it. We've got to weaponize our vote, akin to what Dr. Charles Morris prescribed. After delivering Teddy Roosevelt the White House, he dishonorably discharged 167 Buffalo soldiers who were wrongfully accused of murdering a second white man after being quarantined to their barracks for being wrongfully accused of murdering the first. Dr. Charles Morris, pastor of Abyssinian Church, told Theodore Roosevelt, "You shot us when our guns were empty, and for that, we're going to return the same by delivering a blue top of the ticket and a red Congress to protect the Black South." Biden has been giving us his white, pale KKK ass to kiss since 87% of our electorate voted him into the White House. We are no closer to social justice nor economic inclusion. By our own hand, we have signed up for our own people's peril and extinction to as few in number as the Indians. So I am imploring upon us, until they cut the checks in the quadrillions over multi-generations, to deliver a red Congress when the blue is at the top, and come 2024, a red top of the ticket and a blue Congress henceforth, to protect the over 50% of freedmen who rely on government assistance by design of institutional systemic racism, until we can replace the lanes in Congress with full-chested cash reparationists. And with that being said, family, I have to shut this video down. I've got 4 minutes to get the other one queued up. And we're going to deal with these Catholics and their involvement in the slave trade and why they too owe us $1 bazillion. I'll be going down the chain. Europe owes, Africa owes. Yes, they were complicit, family. They sold us. And now you've got NARC and Cobra's unmitigated gall to try to make our repair all black, black immigrant, black freedmen, when in fact they sold us into slavery and are doing thousands of dollars. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars, far better in terms of their liquidity and wealth position than freedmen. So with that being said, let me jump off of this and I'll see you on the next one in about 3 minutes. Thank you guys. I'll get to your comments. I didn't see a whole bunch. It looks like Terry Lewis says we're on the same long-term tangible redress and recompense. Go somewhere else and talk dim talking points. Geez. Okay, I am not talking dim talking points, Tanya. I am talking chess, not vote blue no matter who, trifecta checkers, which is why we are at George Floyd and Jelani Day. If we don't lock this government down by giving a whole different Congress than we have the top of the ticket, it will be to our peril. The trifecta of either party will extinct us to as few in number as the Indians, because these are two wings of the same oligarch bird. I don't believe in a trifecta of either. I don't believe in suppressing our own votes by not showing up to the polls. This is my strategy on what I believe is best for our people moving forward. The vote is all we've got. We've been neutralized economically. All we've got is the vote. And so, that's the way I see it. I mean, So with that being said, I got a minute, family. I love you, Black. I love you, strong. Peace. Hope to see you on the next one.